a regional office in Broxbourne outside in Hertfordshire, and there was no bars, no pubs or anything, so literally you drive to work, do your 8 hours and drive home, and there'd be no social life whatsoever at work. Then I moved up to London. I used to be drinking 3 or 4 times a week socially, not binge drinking or anything like that, just going out meeting clients and underwriters and things like that in my job. And it was going all right. So I started in the 1st of October in London, started from there, and then in December it kind of got a bit more kind of carried away in a way, where I'd be just kind of drinking on a Tuesday night till 2 in the morning at parties and things like that. All it was is I had a panic attack on the train due to drinking and being hungover. From there, I didn't want to get back on the train. I was worried about having that same panic attack, which was horrible. I started what was called generalisation, where I generalised everything to that one event that happened, and thought, well, if that happened on the train, that's going to happen somewhere else. So I just took all that worry and kind of panic out of the situation by not going to it, and that led to me suffering from severe anxiety. The way I explain it to people is that, say you had a really bad car crash and you didn't want to go back to that place, it's horrible because it brings back bad memories, and someone drove you to that space and you got out of the car, and how would you feel in that moment? Physically, how would you feel? You start sweating, you feel faint, you wouldn't want to be there. And I said that to people, I said that's how I felt 90% of the time, constantly. And everyone, that's a horrible way to be. The first thing was my 21st birthday, because what I was going through, I just went for a simple meal with my family. But for me to go to that meal with my family, who I've known for 21 years, I had to have 5 bottles of beer just to leave the house. And that was a horrible moment. The darkest moment I did have, that tops all of them, is when I'm sat at home and I used to just break down and think, you just sit there and think, am I going to be like this for the rest of my life? Like, is there any cure to this? Like, you can take medication, but you know full well it's in your head. And that was the worst feeling I had, when you question, am I going to be like this for the rest of my life? I spoke to my work about it, and they sent me to an occupational health assessment with a lady called Dr. McLeod, who's absolutely amazing. And she said, right, you need to go see Dr. Brenner, who's a psychiatrist, you need to be on medication. The big key in me getting better was Dr. Brenner. He just talked sense, he didn't kind of lie to me, he was brutally honest to me, and he just filled you with confidence, because he's seen it all before. He looked at me and he thought, he knows it, he's going to get better. He said that to me, he said, you're going to be absolutely fine in 4 weeks. And when someone says that to you, when you're going through the worst time you've ever been through, you sit there and think, wow, God, you think he's God in some ways, because you think he's going to make me better. Probably the main thing for me that I learned at the Priory was the social anxiety sessions, which actually tackled your fears. So, and that was the main thing for me, is not to avoid situations. People shouldn't be worried about admitting they might have a mental health issue. It's not an embarrassing thing. End of the day, you're going to come out a stronger person than anyone else around you, because you've hit rock bottom and you've built yourself back up. You've got people my age who will go out drinking, be throwing up to the early hours, getting paralytic, doing drugs and stuff like that, thinking it's all cool. But until they go through something like my friends and people at the Priory have been through, they have no idea.
So I was at university when I first sort of experienced, I think, depression and social anxiety. Yeah, I basically sort of had a few tricky situations that I encountered, and I think it was difficult to handle them. For me, particularly social situations, so social gatherings, parties, things like that. Really lost my confidence after my first year at university with myself. When I felt very depressed, everything sort of feels quite slow, I feel very tired, quite lethargic. All the days sort of blend into one. It did actually feel excruciatingly painful, which sounds really bizarre. So, gone from times where I've sort of just felt for a couple of days or for a week, very low, and then I've started to see a peak and rise my mood. Had days where I felt okay, and then suddenly I've had a sort of drop, and I think, it varies. But for me, probably my worst time, I'd probably say, was more often not, was sort of down for quite a few days at a time. I think that's when I noticed that it was becoming more of a problem. I needed to seek some help. Trickiest, darkest moment was probably when I started to think about maybe what life would be like if I wasn't here. For myself, my family, the way you're thinking at that point is you're very deep in emotion, and you're not sort of thinking clearly or very clearly. But I genuinely felt at the time that life would be better off for those people that I actually cared about if I wasn't here, and that I was actually sort of making their life a lot worse. So I was fortunate enough to get be able to get a course of CBT at a very good hospital. The strategic approach to therapy, viewing situations, your behaviours, your feelings and the thoughts that you're having, and getting a sense of perspective on the situation was really what brought me through. First, I was a bit apprehensive of some of the methods, the things that we were doing. I remember one of the first classes was mindfulness, and we were walking outside, and I just didn't really think some of the things that they were teaching were going to help me. But obviously, you have to give these things time, and once I'd brought into the methods and everything, I haven't really looked back, and I do feel that although it's been quite, it's been a bit of a, in some respects, a bit of a gloomy year, I'm coming out of it a lot more, like I say, self-assured and robust, and moving forward. I'm definitely feeling a lot more happier and confident. Another thing that I want to say as well is medication did help me regain concentration, help things like sleep, getting to sleep, and things that you sort of take for granted, that when they're sort of difficult or feel difficult, you find yourself in quite a challenging place with it. So medication, CBT, having good families and friends around you is also having that social support is very, very helpful. Thinking about it as well, as situational change, I've subsequently taken myself away from the university that I was at, and I have felt a lot less anxious and a lot happier with the direction now that my life is taking. All of these things combined for me really can sort of put it down to solely one thing.
2012 I was deteriorating, so in August 2012 I looked through my diary and I had an appointment with the GP who in fact gave me a prescription for an antidepressant, which I didn't go through with and take. But then in September 2012 I was offered a job in Cape Town, so it's going to be a new start, a new direction, a new environment, new people, and it was really buoyant, really upbeat, looking into moving, relocating, and then it was withdrawn at the end of September. And whilst I coped with that rejection okay at the time, as time went on I didn't, and I became increasingly anxious. I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't stop worrying about things. The most minor trivial issues would really get to me. So for me the most worrying symptom was sleep issues. So as I said, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but the subsequent tiredness that would cause during the day. The other big thing was I had a constant need for self-assurance. So I'd phone my parents between 5 and 10 times a day, often first thing in the morning after I got out of bed and last thing at night, often just asking them if I'm okay, am I okay? So I'd have an anxiety about whether to say something or not to someone, or should I ask someone this or that or the other, and it would ruin a whole weekend. But if it wasn't that anxiety, it would be something else. It was just symptomatic of the way I was feeling. Yeah, I remember I had quite a few really dark moments. One was one Friday after work, and I was so down, so anxious, because I had nothing to do. I had to be on my own with myself in my own company. I couldn't stand that. I remember a few occasions at work I was so spaced out. Someone described me as being there but not there. So I was there physically, but I wasn't there mentally or emotionally. Yeah, I found group therapy really useful because you're sharing things with people who've been through similar things, similar anxieties, similar depressions, and it's great to have that like empathy within the group, so they can really offer support. The other thing I'd like to mention was the combination of therapies. So there was mindfulness meditation, there was things like anxiety management, dealing with social anxiety, relaxation therapy, music imagery. I think mindfulness, certainly the concept of mindfulness, of being in the moment, if you think about where a lot of our anxieties come from, they're things to do with the past or the future. So by just being in the present, you eliminate a lot of anxieties. Lifestyle changes. I wasn't doing enough exercise looking back, and I've upped that now. I wasn't doing enough regular or substantial exercise. I think medication, talking about that, it's really important to mention. Is the first one didn't work for me at all, and now my fifth combination of medication. So my advice for people on medication is that, if one doesn't work, don't despair. Ask your doctor if there are any alternatives for you, and it's a very personalised thing. And it might be that it takes a few goes to get it right. With me, it certainly was. Finally, something we did in CBT was called values direction. So it was looking at what parts of your life, mainly personal or professional, are important to you, what elements are important to you, and how much satisfaction do you get from those. So for me, there are a couple of specific parts of my life that were very important to me that I was getting zero or very little satisfaction from, that I'm now in the process of changing. One of the biggest things is that I don't have to seek reassurance anymore. I can make decisions far more easily. My sleep is really good. Now I can get out of bed. I can, be happy from the off.